I appreciate the help. Uh, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending. I'm hoping that everyone can see the slide that I'm sharing. If not, let me know.
We see that, yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sana. Um, so uh, this is in today's discussion entitled Decision Point, and I think you'll see why in a moment. It isn't necessarily obvious if you're in the match right this second, but it will become so. And so today, what we're actually going to be discussing are these questions. The world has gone crazy. Should I bother with the match, whether it's this year or next? Uh, and if I do, what if I'm in the match now and I don't have any interviews? If you have interviews, fantastic. How should one prepare for those? And uh, if uh, if I neglected to say so in the beginning, by way of experience, I was the Neurology Residency Program Director at the University of California, San Diego for many years. After which, for about 15 years, I was the education director for UC San Diego Health Sciences International. And so I have been through the match many, many, many times. So I would like to see the same information that medical students here get. I would like to see that that's dispersed to everyone so that it's an even playing field, as they say. And I bring these up as much as anything as topics for discussion. So if you have questions as we go along, please put them in the chat, and hopefully, Peace, if you can watch for those, and feel free to interrupt as we go along. This discussion is for the group, not for me. So having said that, let's launch in. Why bother with the match? And as the world is upside down now. And the answer is several reasons. First, uh, as you probably know, the qualifications that you need to complete to be eligible for the match are the same as, or at least are a good part of the same requirements for most of the state licenses that one might apply for, particularly the training licenses, nearly identical, other than perhaps for being a resident in that state. And so preparation pays off either way, that way. Um, the bigger issue from the I hate to point to myself and say establishment, but the bigger issue for the United States is that they desperately need you, and for whatever reason, they don't seem to understand that yet. They will. And so I don't want to overrun you with numbers, but if you look at this one slide with me, there's about 1 million physicians practicing clinically in the United States right now. The American Academy of Medical Colleges, the AAMC, says that as of 2021, the US was already more than 201,000 physicians behind, considering that there are medical deserts. There are places that are just completely uh, devoid of a sufficient number of physicians to practice. And uh, about 20% of the entire workforce is at retirement age for physicians. So, at a minimum, 40% of what the US needs is already not there or fast approaching. So, they desperately need IMGs. So, please don't give up your dream if it's to practice here in the United States. The number of trainees in the system now, in terms of residents and fellows and medical students, as you can see from the slide, it's nowhere near big enough a system to handle that shortfall. So again, they desperately need you. They, for whatever reason, just don't want to realize it. The individual states are realizing it, particularly here in Washington, I have to say. In comparison, this state's fantastic in terms of their thinking ahead in terms of needs. And so, should you be thinking about the match or clinical training licenses? Absolutely, positively. We desperately need you. Um, now, uh, I know that you're still probably thinking about that first slide. What's the decision point? Here's the Neurology Residency Program's uh, program calendar for getting through the match. It's pretty much the same every year. And if you look at the dates, you say, well, gosh, we're in the second week of December. There's no deadlines there. No, but um, every year, particularly last year, every year between the start of the match and when rank order lists are submitted, something less than a quarter, last year 22%, a quarter of international medical graduates drop out of the match for a variety of reasons. Disheartened by the process, or at this time of the year in particular, disheartened because, oh my gosh, I have no interviews. This is going nowhere. I should drop out. No, don't drop out. Just to address that here. Uh, Even with no interviews, one is still eligible for the SOAP, so that second iteration of the match. Every year, there's maybe 900 to 1,300 unfilled spots in that portion. And then more importantly, you can say more importantly, the second the SOAP ends, so Thursday of match week, so mid-March, programs that had spots that weren't in the match can now reveal them. And it's been the case for many, many years that more people match in those few weeks after the match than match in the SOAP. I can tell you that from direct experience. This year will be particularly interesting, but I'm going to go out on a limb and bet that there'll be more spots available after the match than in previous years. And here's why. And this is why I say this is the decision point. If you look at the match website, this is the next deadline, January 30th, quota change deadline. And to an applicant, it may mean nothing at all. Okay, that's a date that I don't have to do anything about. Um, it is a date where programs have to say we're in the match or not, and they also have to tell the match, here's how many spots we're going to have in the match. The programs know that they have to be able to fund those spots through all the years of residency, and so right now that's a problem because so many large institutions have had their funding cut either directly clinically through Medicaid, Medicare issues, or indirectly because the current government has cut so much research funding, and so uh, they any slots that were being funded directly by departments, they may just not have that discretionary spending this year. And on a larger scale, programs that got their spots funded by the institution, which is a good chunk of the spots in many residency programs, they'll have to think long and hard about whether or not they're going to be able to fund those through whatever calamities ensue over the next 2 or 3 years. So I would expect that there may be less spots available than anticipated. And how would you know that? So the NRMP lists those participating programs and the number of slots. And so even though this is a deadline for the programs, uh, applicants, and even if you're not an applicant but you're thinking about applying next year, that's something you want to start looking at, particularly at the end of January, to see. So, for instance, if you really wanted to go to Tulane University, and you know that gosh, last year they had 20 slots for interns, uh, and you look at it this year and you find that they have 16 spots. That actually changes the odds substantially for an IMG. And not to say that you wouldn't still want to rank them, but it may definitely change your priority list or your rank list. Um, And conversely, at the far end of the match, you go through the match completes, the soap completes, spots become available. It may well be that in those intervening weeks and months, Tulane has figured out how to fund those spots, and all of a sudden they become available. And that's one of many examples. Um, but it's an important consideration to start tracking now. Um, if that's not clear, let me know. But very important to actually do due diligence on following these small changes. I would also say that that same portion of their website tells you about new programs coming online. And for whatever the odd timing is, it's often the case that in the few weeks and even days prior to that deadline, that new programs are finally approved. I think it's because the match meeting is in of that corporation is in January or sometime thereabouts. I forget the specific date. And so programs find out very late that they're now eligible. And so by following that website those last few weeks before the deadline, you literally may be the first person to find out that a program is open and has slots. And believe me, uh, it's nail-biting time for that program. If you're one of those people that calls up and asks them about it, high odds of matching or at least being seriously considered. So that information is something you want to start following now. If you're going to be in the match next year, you're thinking about it. I would try doing that this year just so that you have a handle on how that works. Crucially important. I can tell you that as the international education director at UC San Diego, this was a major source of intelligence in terms of understanding where there were likely to be spots for people that didn't match. And so that's my pearl for today. Now, so having said that, uh, let's go back to this timing cycle. If you look, we're in the interview cycle that began sometime in the beginning of October, and different programs end at different times. But nowadays, that's sometime in January, occasionally into early February. And so why am I bringing it up now? Because if you're in the match and you haven't received an interview yet, you're probably really, really nervous. And for good reason, because while there's still 6 or 8 weeks left in the program in that cycle, it's likely also the case that those are scheduled out all the way until they're full. Uh, and so that's a good reason to lose sleep at night. You know, uh, obtaining an interview of any sort, phone, online, in person, of however that may be, is crucial. You have to have interviewed with a program to list them on the rank order list, uh, and realistically to match in any way, shape, or form, you need to have had contact with them, and so getting that interview is everything. Um, the programs have typically filled out their interview schedules, most by some automatic means, occasionally by direct email contact. But the thing about that is the schedule itself lends itself to unexpected openings. And so you can sit passively at this point, hoping that they'll still contact you. But the reality is, if they haven't contacted you yet, and it's this late in the season, you have very little to lose by making a brief, well targeted communication with them now. Say because the odds are, the chances that any given program will contact you beyond this time are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So nothing to lose, everything to gain. So the issue becomes, how do I position myself to take advantage of those unexpected openings? And the openings occurred for a variety of reasons. In the old days when the interviews were all in person, it was definitely the case that people would overschedule their interviews, applicants would overschedule their interviews, and then just run out of money. And so there'd be a lot of open interviews at the end of the season. Nowadays, with so much of it online, the reasons have changed, but those spots are still there. Unexpected illness, weather cancellations. At the end of the year, there's definitely interview fatigue. Somebody with a lot of interviews realizes, at this point, I just don't need to have any more insurance interviews. I'm good. Uh, and then dates of joining the holidays for a variety of family and other reasons, travel reasons, can foul up interviews. You need to be able to take advantage of those. It's surprising how many people obtain interviews, at least in my experience in the UC system, how many people obtain interviews through that means and match. There's no institutional memory afterwards of how one got an interview. It's only, how good is the interview, how good is the application. And so, in terms of an actual action point there, what you would want to do is send a very brief communication in perfect English to the program coordinator of whatever that program is, not the program director, but the program coordinator, and tell them, I'm really interested in your program. I just wanted to let you know that I'm available for an interview with, at the absolute last minute of, 24 hours notice, 2 hours notice, whatever it is, because I'm so interested in your system. And if is a specific reason that you're really interested in their system, you know some of the residents there, you are really interested in their research, say so, but make it really, really brief because they're getting hundreds, if not thousands, of emails all the time. Uh, and so send that and make sure you give them good contact information. And you'd be surprised how often that works. I've over many, many years, it's many residents, both in our own neurology program and in people that we were helping match who gained interviews that way. So I hope that makes sense. Um, Now, let's take the next step here and assume that you've gotten interviews. That's great because what that realistically means is that uh, depending on the size of the program, you've already put yourself above 70 or even 80% of the people applying to a given program. That's fantastic. It means, in essence, that at least based on paper, the program thinks that you are rankable as one of their residents. Uh, but they'll still have a very large list. Our list would probably be a 5-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1 excess because we know that some people will rank other places first, some people drop out, etc. Uh, but so congratulations, you're on that list. Now the question is, how do I move up enough to be in a position to have a good chance of matching? And that's a very different mindset than the initial part of the match where you're just trying not to be eliminated in those mass numbers. So, like I say, it's very promising to get an interview, even one interview. That's all it takes. Um, but how one accomplishes that is important. I'll say at the outset here, I don't know if you've looked at any of the YouTube presentations on interviewing. Um, what I would suggest is that you just don't bother. I saw one, I didn't actually watch it, but I saw uh, a, a YouTube piece a few days ago where they were proudly pronouncing, "We have the answers to the top 200 questions that interviewers like to ask in interviews." And if you go that route of memorizing 200 answers and go in there and wait, hoping that they'll ask one of those questions, that's going to be a flat, uninteresting, passive interview. That's very defeating. And so take my advice, don't do that. What do the what does the program want in the end? They want to see that you're a good fit for their team. And so enthusiasm, able to think on your feet, and that you've spent time introspecting, you spent time thinking about how your career has come to be where it is and where you're going. And if you can convey that in the interview, you're doing great. And so spend time on those attributes, which we'll get into a little bit more here in the remaining time. Um, the interviews are short, they tend to be highly repetitive. Uh, and again, think about this. The Where is the decision actually made? At a faculty meeting in sometime in February, more than likely, a few weeks before a couple weeks at least before the deadline for submitting rank order lists. And it'll be a bunch of faculty members sitting around a table with a bunch of files, the applicant files, going through them very quickly, discussing them, and creating a list for the program director, a rank list. And so your real mission is to make them remember you in a good way. Make them remember you, and if possible, even to have a faculty member that interviewed you acting as your advocate. And I have to say, at least in my experience in those sort of meetings, it's very quick. A spin of an applicant through that discussion, maybe a minute and a half or less, depending on quite on the dynamics. And it's often the case that somebody an interviewer who didn't have a positive interview is the one who remembers. And you can't allow that to be the case if you're the applicant, or you want to do everything you can to not have that be the case. So rather than memorizing 200 questions, uh, practice keeping a discussion positive, energetic, um, and when possible, steering where the conversation is going. And what does that mean? Uh, Presumably you put your best foot forward, you put your best suit on in your personal statement about why you wanted to be in this sort of residency program. And so any question that they ask you that you can steer back towards your personal statement is a win. You know it's ending positively or on a good note, and you're very much increasing the chances that they'll remember the answer. Crucial. They get to the faculty member gets to the match meeting, they open your file, they see your face, and more than likely your personal statement is what they'll look at to try and jog their memory. And they'll read that, they will hopefully remember hearing you say the same thing, and then you've won because they remember you. And most people end up having a positive impression of an interview if they remember it. And interestingly, getting an interview late because of a cancellation, one of the reasons I think that that actually helps is because it's so late in the season. Many people choose interviews early in the season because the interviewers are still energetic, which is true, and there's still there's a lot of excitement. And so they think, well, gosh, if I interview near the end of the season, all the energy is going to have gone out of the process, and my odds are lower. It's true that interviewers, get tired of interviewing over and over to a degree, but they're far more likely to remember the applicants at the end of the process than the beginning. So there's things that work in favor of aggressively getting those last interviews. I don't want to beat that into the ground, but I'm just saying it tends to work for at a higher percentage than one would think. So, in terms of those interviews, don't let an interviewer drag you into a negative interview. Most aren't there to start a fight with you, but many, I don't know about many, but there are definitely interviewers out there who want to put you under a little bit of stress, probably for the right reasons. They want to have a team that works together as a team under duress. And so they figure, if I stress them a little bit in the interview and they fall apart, that's good to know because, I'd rather know that now than the first time the pager goes off. And that's not a great interviewing strategy, but there's definitely people out there who do use that strategy. And there are also people who just really oughtn't to be interviewing, quite frankly. Sometimes there's a gap in the interviewer schedule and they just bring somebody in who wouldn't have been on the A team, as they say. And so, but you can't let those defeat you. Those are the interviews to worry about. If you come in, sit down, and hit it off with the interviewer, uh, you have nothing to worry about from that one. It's the other ones you need to protect yourself against. Now, besides the interview itself, I highly recommend that you prepare and practice a two, three, four sentence pitch about yourself. I think most of us don't like to talk about ourselves, but in this particular case, that elevator pitch, as it's called, a pitch about yourself that you could tell on an elevator between the third and fourth floors really comes in handy in in-person interviews. Oh my gosh, literally, you may be riding up to the into the waiting area for the interviews with the chairman of the department, or with one of the faculty members, or with the program coordinator. In the waiting room, whether it's electronic or in person, it's often the case that a conversation develops, and and at some point there, you will have a conversation with the program coordinator. Probably the most important person of all, more than the program director, even in terms of establishing that rank list. Um, there are other times where it's also important. If you think that you're attending an electronic town hall and they're not noticing you, wrong. If you think that you're on a virtual tour and that they're not noticing, wrong. Every one of those opportunities is an opportunity for the program to get a sense of whether or not this person fits in to to what they are aspiring to for their residents. So trust me, prepare that pitch, practice it a few times, on your relatives, on your colleagues, on the dog, whoever it takes, and yeah, so that you can so it's ready to go on a moment's notice on the tip of your tongue. It's very, very, very important. Trust me. Uh, See, I think we've covered most of the things on this slide. Uh, Good. So as we talked about the interviewers, um, some programs really go out of the way to cultivate a specific set of interviewers and task them with each of them with a different component of the interview. One may ask about motivation, one may ask about the details of your background, et cetera. And that's actually a pretty sophisticated way to interview. That's the way it's done in elite um, business organizations. That's not the way that most programs interview, unless things have drastically changed in the last year. Uh, Most of the time, they're using faculty members who are willing to fill in a pretty large schedule. And because of that, many of the interviewers are inexperienced. And so be prepared to pick up the slack in the interview for that inexperienced interviewer, because they may not know what they want to ask next. They also may not be prepared to ask you questions because they haven't seen your file until the moment you sit down. And so preparation is important. One of those things, which we'll talk about in just a moment here, is the sorts of questions you want to ask them. Very important. And the interviewers, they really want to distinguish between applicants rather than eliminate people. So most aren't going to, argue with you, but they want to ask about your strengths and weaknesses. If there's problem areas on your application, or relatively weaker areas, the program director, the assistant program director, they will absolutely positively ask you about those. The others, maybe, maybe not. Um, so again, totally different than the screening process, though. So during the interviews, one of the hard parts for the applicant is they don't know which kind of interviewer they're getting, and often it's 5 or 6 interviews in a row. And So the big thing is to stay calm, energetic, and positive. And again, you can always go back to your elevator pitch if you practiced it, and you can always bring things back to your personal statement, and that keeps you on pretty steady ground. Um, is that okay? Sorry, just making sure I wasn't missing anything in the chat. Um, Now, along those lines, if you're reading the slide ahead of me, you can see this also. Um, the vast majority of faculty interviewers will know very little about international medical schools, international medical education in general, and that makes them uncomfortable to interview somebody who's from a system they're not familiar with. And that's commonly referred to as a clinical unknown. And that can be defeating if you let that stay that way. And so your mission is to gently, kindly, at least educate them, if not make them realize what a strength that actually is to bring an international medical graduate into their program. I mean, the world has gone global, particularly global medicine. And so turn that to your advantage. Don't let them keep it lingering as something they're hesitant about. You know, uh, what's your single biggest strength, bar none, going into these interviews? You've done an internship. You've actually clinically practiced as a doctor. In most countries, it's because it's part of the licensing process. And so if you're also, a licensed physician in your home country, tell them that too. That's a huge leg up that no medical students can lay a claim to here. So take full advantage of that. The reality is also is that you have practiced in a different system, and so you've learned things in a way that's different from the interviewer. You've practiced with a very different patient population, both medically and culturally, and the disease demographic of that population is also really different. Those are strengths, not uncertainties, and so you want to practice how to tell them that in every conceivable way. What I would strongly suggest at the risk of being over the top is that plan in every single interview, every single engagement with faculty, make sure to tell them I've done an internship. And if they're uncertain quite what that means and want to talk to you about it, great. Then you can begin telling them about the rest of the strengths of the system. But you can't let that just slide. It's very important not to be too passive in these interviews. I think it's probably the most common mistake, honestly, after all these years of interviewing, is for the applicant to just sit there, and it makes the interviewer have to try and draw them out enough to get a sense of how they'd be on the team, and it really makes for a less positive interview. Um, and so if you have the opportunity to practice the interview itself, I would certainly do that. I'm not seeing any questions yet. If you have them, this is the time. I've heard myself talk plenty of times. Um, let's see. No, I see good afternoon. Okay. Um, so along these lines of preparing for the interview, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can get back there. Yeah. Um, I think we've discussed these mostly. The sorts of questions that IMGs need to look out for are the sorts of questions that ask about the overall weaknesses, um, uh, comparative weaknesses. Again, you're trying to rank highly, right? And so on this slide, these are the top reasons international physicians don't match. And at this stage of the match, if you're into the interview part of the match, it's really these top three that are a concern. The lag between medical school graduation, again, typically the year before that clinical year, until you're actually sitting there in the interview, is their biggest concern because they'll be worried that your skills will rust. Uh, that's the ideal time to point out, that that date that appears on the transcript is when the didactic sessions ended. Since then, I've done an internship. I did these sorts of rotations at a major, in a major university setting, um, and I've done these things since. It's pretty easy to turn that positive as long as something's been going on in that time frame. The other thing too that can help is, again, in that circumstance, they may not know anything about the medical school that you went to. If it's, we'll just pick one, if it's the University of Cairo, say, uh, and so if they're comparing you to somebody from the University of Chicago, that makes them uncertain because of their own lack of knowledge, not because of you. And so, how does one deal with that? Spend the time before the interview to learn a few key facts about your own institution. And so, oh, well, I'm glad you asked. The University of Cairo has been the top uh, medical school in the region for 2,500 years. And you probably heard of some of our more famous graduates, et cetera. Short, sweet, and not confrontative, but you want to show them, oh no, no, this is a legitimate training center. Another thing that often helps along those lines also is to compare. So, the University of Abu Dhabi is a large multi-center university with, you know, 10,000 students per site, and is very comparable in terms of the faculty and student size to, say, the University of California. You just eliminated their concerns by saying those things. And so that's the way to think about these problems. The gaps in training, same way, you really want to be able to tell them about clinical experiences, but anything that shows positive momentum and upward trend, that's the idea here. These other things, the dean's letter, uh, et cetera, these really come in earlier in that screening process, so I don't think we need to discuss those much today. Um, Now, so what about that? Let's see, were there piece? I'm relying on you to help me here. If there's questions along the way there, please jump in. Otherwise, in terms of those interviews that lag, I would say just from observation, most commonly it's the unprepared interviewer who sits down and starts looking through your file and says, "Let's see, while I'm looking through this, do you have any questions for me?" And how you play that or questions at the opportunity for question at the end is also very important. One of the easiest ways to hurt yourself in an interview is to ask about the night call frequency, meal tickets, how far away from the medical center am I allowed to live and still respond to a night call? Those sorts of logistical questions. First, they're probably on the website. Two, they're the sorts of things you ask the residents. Three, if you're asking a faculty member, especially the program director, you know what they're thinking? They're thinking, one, why didn't this person just look at our website? So they're, in other words, you're not prepared. And two, they hear that and they're thinking, wow, this person's more worried about not doing too much work rather than being 100% in, 100% invested in the program. And so do yourself a favor, get those answers somewhere else, but don't ask them in an interview. I would guess it's probably 75% of applicants where if you ask them if they have questions, that's what you get. And it does not leave a good impression. So don't go there. Uh, Now, the mature applicants, especially the really the cream of the crop, mature applicants are comparing programs. So in other words, you want them to sell their program to you. Ask them questions about what happens with their graduates. And one, they'll perceive that, okay, this is a mature applicant. And two, you're asking about something that they have to think about a lot. The program director has to fill out forms at the end of every year about what percentage of residents have gone into clinical training versus academic fellowships, how many have passed their board exams, things like that. And so they'll definitely know the answers. And the fact that you're asking them questions about something they're familiar with will make them happy because most doctors love to talk. And uh, if you get them talking, you know what they're going to remember that, oh, that was a very good interview. Probably because they listen to themselves. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be entirely about you. It's again important in the final analysis to create an advocate for you at that faculty meeting. And this kind of question definitely does that. So, what kinds of questions are we talking about? Oh, thank you so much for asking me if I had any questions. I noticed from your website that there are 50 plus fellowship programs here. That's amazing. Uh, do most of your graduating residents stay here to do fellowships, or do they tend to go to other specific subspecialty fellowships or specific institutions? Uh, uh, what's your impression? And so they will love that question. Uh, Asking about the general mix of how many graduates go into clinical practice versus academic is also a really good question. Uh, you'll just be prepared for a variety of answers. If you're talking to a research scientist, he may say, "Oh, too many of them go to," they all the same, they'll love answering the question either way. I think you'll get quite a novel set of answers. Um, it also helps to ask where the department, the residency is always part of a specific department. So, the neurology residency, UCSD, is part of the Department of Neurosciences. Asking them, where do you see your department growing over the next 10 years is a way of asking them about opportunities for residents over the next few years. And they'll not only see that as a very astute question, but it's also one that they'll have directly had conversations about with their boss, which is the chairman of the department. And so those sorts of questions you want to have ready to go in your pocket to ask them about. Um, if you're asking about specific elements of their program, about the faculty, do understand that anything you specifically ask about, you will want to have looked into ahead of time. So if you say, I really want to join a fellowship with a really strong focus on diabetic retinopathy or, something along those lines. Make sure that you've checked to see that their department, does have at least some projects along those lines. Because if you ask them about something that they're actually deficient in, that might not be as favorable for you. So due diligence will serve you well in terms of looking at their website and the website of your own medical school. And so yes, I think that's the bulk of what I want to discuss. If there are questions on there, I'm not seeing them. So I hope, let's see. Let me look and see. Okay, so Wes, I'm sorry I missed your question completely because this is a new computer. I'll blame it on the computer. Um, and Santa. So let me hit these in order. Let's see how much time we have. A few minutes. So what's the best way to address the clinical gap during an interview? Uh, you need to break it down enough to show a positive trend that you've still been interested in medicine and that you're taking steps to continue your education through that gap. How you do that depends on the specifics. What I would certainly do is the things we were just talking about. Um, the gap that you see on the on my transcripts reflects the fact um, that they reflect the end of academic training. Since then, I did an internship. If you did a residency training beyond that, fantastic. And in fact, there may be ways to avoid some or all of the residency years, depending. Um, in some cases, people have actually come to the U.S. because their government's given them some sort of fellowship or grant to study in the United States, in which case you really want to stay that. I was planning to do residency at, my home country. I received this prestigious grant from my home country as an opportunity to become the, best possible physician by broadening my education. In other words, use that for what you can. In terms of here, you really you want to uh, find things that fill that time. And again, it's at that point it becomes very specific. The best thing is any sort of clinical experience, of which there's still institutions that offer those. I was just talking to my friend, the vice chancellor at UCSD, and they're, for obvious reasons, for visa reasons, seeing far less international physicians than in previous years, but they still have, 1,400 faculty physicians, the vast majority of whom are willing to have people work with them. And they have one of the most prestigious research institutions in the country, and so those opportunities are out there. University of Washington also has opportunities, and so if your time is limited in terms of time or income in terms of obtaining those, you would ideally want to do something like that just before the interview season, so that you can talk about the experience in the interview. There's a variety of other things that one can do in the meantime to fill that gap. It's a pretty long list, and so uh, if uh, if you like, we can discuss that offline, or if you have specific ideas, great. But yes, filling the clinical gap or explaining that there's not really a gap is the most crucial thing. So I agree with your question 1,000%. Let's see now. Sana asked, uh, I'm wondering why residency programs are looking for IMGs without a clinical gap, despite the main goal of residency being learning. Most IMGs have this clinical gap, so why does it matter? Uh, so uh, I agree with you completely. It does not. Most, many academic faculty have no idea that it takes time to transfer from one country to another to get visas to take tests, etc. And so minimizing that gap is the safest way to avoid the problem. It's not fair, and it's not even relevant. But the claim is always that oh, your clinical skills will have deteriorated during that time away from clinical practice, and uh, I don't believe that to be the case at all. Having trained many international physicians through the UC programs, um, but it's a perception, and it's a perception you have to acknowledge and find a way to dispel. And so I I will try to leave it at that. There's good reasons and bad reasons that people uh, don't necessarily want international medical graduates as compared to domestic applicants. I think one of the other completely illegitimate reasons is that, well, if I give away that spot, that's a spot that a domestic applicant won't have. Okay, but the domestic applicants fill at a rate of 97%, and there are 150,000 residency and fellowship spots and only 100,000 domestic medical students. So that's baloney to me. The other is that they need to expand massively, as we talked about in the beginning, to fill the physician shortage. And so to me, those arguments against IMGs are just out of ignorance. So that doesn't necessarily help, but I hope it makes you feel better. Yeah, so that was a large part of our of the way that we constructed our program at UCSD was specifically to change that perception. So when individuals came into our program, we really wanted them to be there for at least 6 months, ideally a year or longer. And what we would do is pair them with a faculty member. So they had an academic mentor who was used to evaluating students, residents, fellows, and other faculty who they were working with doing clinical work and research work. And we would have them uh, complete evaluations that were the same evaluations that we would use for the residents. Uh, and so at the end of the program, however long it was, the faculty member would be completing this form saying, yes, I've been working with this individual for this long. We were working on this kind of research projects, and he or she was in this clinic, and I've rated their skills at the same level as a PGY2 medicine resident. And that sort of evaluation is a goal because it's an experienced evaluator who sees lots of trainees who's telling them, no, 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 this person is perfectly fine. And that's essentially the whole game in a nutshell, is changing the perceptions of the interviewers and of the program. So I agree with you, it's completely unfair. And that's part of why I'm happy to have these discussions because there's no way around changing the perceptions. So I hope that answers your question. Um, how can we overcome this? Yes. Uh, is it too late to apply for more programs now in December to increase our chances to get an interview? Um, uh, no, but yes. The reality is, as I said, the interview schedules will be completely filled out. Most programs get so many applications. Um, that they've already eliminated all but the number they can maximally interview with a few extra. And so throwing on an extra one right now goes right by them. Um, I'll be honest, when I was the neurology residency director, if I got applications that were late, no matter how good they were, um, I was very unlikely to even consider their application because to me that suggested at best really poor planning or disorganized thinking. And that's not what I wanted from a resident. I want somebody who's prepared and ready to go and who will, if I need them to, will show up at 3 o'clock on the corner of, whatever streets to deal with the problem. And so you want to take every opportunity to show them that you're prepared, prepared, prepared. I would, though, with programs you've already applied to but not heard from, is take the chance now of that short, sweet communication. Ideally, run it by someone uh, whose written English skills are native, and ideally in the medical profession, so that it's flawless. You want those communications to be flawless. Short and sweet, send it to the program coordinator and hope for the best. That's a much better way of increasing your odds for an interview. It sounds silly and low odds, but it's not. It's amazing how often it works. So that's my advice. You'll probably get a slightly different advice from other people, but adding on additional institutions now is unlikely to. That's a very diminishing return sort of opportunity. Let's see. Do you mean we can contact them by email, like follow-up letter of intent? No, not a letter of intent. And particularly if you haven't had an interview, that would mean nothing. Anyway, no, no. This is a short, sweet, specific ask for them to consider you for any last minute interview availabilities because you're so interested in their program. See, letters of intent really don't have any place in the system. And so, I think most programs will hang on to it or put it in your file, but it doesn't really, it's not a routine part of the system evaluation. Sometimes it'll end up, at the faculty meeting where it's a really hard choice between, which applicant is number 12 and which applicant is number 13. Then maybe if there's letter of intent that might make a difference, but those sorts of things don't help much. Um, I think along those same lines, the other question that frequently comes up is, should I send a thank you letter to everybody who interviewed me? I actually wouldn't. I would send one to the program coordinator and ask them uh, to thank your interviewers for you that really thought highly of the program. It's going to, it's very likely to be at the top of my list. Let me know if there's any other way I can, help promote that. That's the sort of thing they want to hear. So I wouldn't go overboard with novel things, or you're my number one choice. Don't bother. They can't ask you. And so even if you tell them, they're sort of squeamish about putting it in the system in any sort of formal way. So I hope that answers your question. Any others? That's the end of the chat ones. There are many, many aspects to this. As I sort of said at the beginning, the single biggest thing is this decision point. If you're already in the match, stay in the match. You've already put in all the hard work and prepared. If you can wangle an interview out of these last several weeks, hugely to your advantage. Everything to gain, nothing to lose. Try. If you don't, just by virtue of being ECFMG certified and having all of your paperwork completed, you're still eligible for the SOAP, even if you don't turn in a rank order list. And so stay in. There's a slightly different process for that, and we can discuss that as it gets closer if people are interested. And then, boy, oh boy, that time right after the SOAP. So the Thursday evening before match day, the SOAP ends. Uh, the embargo of programs and positions that weren't in the match opens up, and there's a floodgate on the internet on a variety of sites of where those places are. And so you really need to be ready to jump on those by contacting them in any way that you can. It's sort of, I always used to think of it as the Wild West in terms of that time. But again, there's many, many more people that match in those few weeks after the match than match during the SOAP process, just because there's so relatively few spots in the SOAP. So keep your chin up because there's many, many opportunities yet here to find a residency position. Uh, None of that, of course, stops you from trying to obtain a clinical training license if that's here in Washington or in one of the other several states that does. And if you don't know, it's in excess of 22 states now that are actually changing their licensing laws to make it shorter, if not easier, uh, for international medical graduates to practice in their state. Because again, the states realize how short of physicians they are. Uh, so, uh, so I hope that answers your questions. Um, the so I see that one last question there from Tamar about where the residencies are posted. There's a variety of sites. If you've been in the match and you've gone through the SOAP, uh, as SOAP closes, they release to you a list of the programs that have gone through the SOAP and still not filled, which is a handful. But that's where you get that list. The For the other sites, it depends where the residencies opt to post that notice. And there's a variety, I mean, there's many of those sites, some commercial, some not. Many of them are student blogs. I would say most of them are student blogs. And if you have some downtime over the holidays, I'd actually go hunting for them and create a list. Maybe TIMGA can put together a list also that way. You don't want to start having to sort them out at that last minute. You want to, be monitoring them. Yeah, so you'll have to do a little bit of homework on your own on that one, I think. Uh, all right. I don't recall a year where anyone had the slightest trouble finding most of those positions. The one other thing I would say is that if your home country has a cultural mission here in the United States, uh, let them know if you don't immediately match. I know there's a tendency to, I don't want to tell people that, but let them know that because oftentimes they have relationships with specific institutions and have remarkable assets that they can sometimes help with. Sometimes no, sometimes yes. So you have nothing to lose by contacting them. Um, the to So Hannah's question is, do geographic locations have any impact? Absolutely, positively. And in brief, if you want to sort of create your own picture of what that looks like, the go to last year's matched demographics on the NRMP site, and they split it up by state, and so you can see which places are more likely to have unfilled spots, or which places are more likely to take international medical graduates. With the caveat that this year will be very different because of the bizarre things that the federal government is doing to universities and to the Medicare, Medicaid system. And so, that's your best option. In a nutshell, in terms of where those places are, California fills almost all of its spots, like in the 95 to 99% range for any given institution. And so everyone likes the idea of being on the West Coast, but it's actually one of the hardest spots to get into. Where's the highest likelihood places of finding either an IMG match or post-match openings? New York State and New Jersey and Michigan in that order. And then below that, Illinois, because they've changed their licensing laws, and then gets to be a larger list. New York, interestingly, it's not because of their programs aren't in high demand, but they have so many hospitals in the city that it's really, really challenging for them to find enough interns to fill all those spots. And so that's absolutely should be on the list of considerations. Excellent education all the way around. Also in most of those institutions, it's pretty hard to find a bad residency, honestly. I mean, there'll be some where there are personality issues within the department. It's like any big family. But in terms of, meeting the requirements of the ACGME or meeting fellowship requirements or other things, uh, it's pretty hard to find a training program that doesn't get you there. So I hope that answers your question. If TIMGA is keeping the slides from some of the prior discussions, I think that information is on one of the prior ones. But again, if not, happy to discuss that at another time. So, any last questions? I appreciate your letting me blabber on for so long. I'm only trying to help. If there's other questions you can think of, feel free to send them along to Timga, who will pass them through. Happy to help any way I can. So have a good day. Masalama.
Thank you, Dr. Delaney.
See, I will stop. Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much. Peace. I will talk to you next time.
Thank you. Masalama.
Masalama.
Thank you.
Thank you.